Even with all the recent gains made by gays, bisexuals, and transgenders, hundreds of thousands aren't feeling those gains. That's because many are more concerned with survival. According to the Center for American Progress, at least 320,000 LGBT youths are homeless in this country. And here in Colorado Springs, outreach organizations come in contact with 300 to 400 homeless young people every year. And they say, depending on the year, 20 to 40% of them are homeless because of their sexuality. Here's just one of those stories.
The world is a much kinder place to gays, lesbians, bisexuals, and transgenders than it was years, even just months ago. Don't ask, don't tell is a thing of the past. Same-sex marriage is now legal in 32 states and counting. Even the Vatican recognizes homosexuals have gifts and qualities to offer Christian communities. But despite all these gains, many in the LGBT community are shunned by their own families.
This is the dorm that I used to stay in.
That's why 10 years ago, Addison Petty wound up here, a shelter for homeless youth.
It really was relief. And I felt like for the first time I could kind of see my way out and I could kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of being able to do what I wanted to do with my life for the first time.
Even though he was born female, Addison wanted to navigate this world as a male, a lifestyle incompatible with his parents' values.
There was a young gay couple that were holding hands, and as they were walking by, my uncle said, "In Trinidad, we beat fags like that back into the closet."
Addison eventually came out to his family of devout Jehovah's Witnesses.
Tell me exactly what your parents said when you broke the news.
My parents' initial response was that this was something that we could fix, but it was very clearly like it was a challenge that we were going to have to face, but that I would come out kind of on the other side of this, ultimately not being queer.
But life at home quickly became unbearable, so at just 16, Addison left everything he'd ever known.
That was probably the most devastating piece at the time, was being cut off from both of my sisters, who are both younger than I am.
It's a story that's not all that uncommon for LGBT youth.
The proportion of youth who are homeless who are also lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender is really it's really disproportionate.
Studies show lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgenders make up roughly 5 to 10% of the youth population, but up to 40% of the homeless youth population.
The primary reason is family rejection.
That's because many parents feel they have to make a choice between their faith and their child.
I've sat face to face with parents who have said, my son just came out to me as gay and I am not okay with that because I'm afraid for his soul.
And from there, it's often a downward spiral.
They're sometimes literally kicked out of their home by their parents, or things are made so uncomfortable and so abusive at home that they choose to leave, that they choose to flee and face the dangers of the street.
And those dangers are everywhere.
They're going to be solicited for drugs, for sex. Some will engage in survival sex.
Fortunately, Addison was spared life on the streets and in the parks. He spent his first several months at Urban Peak.
I definitely had a feeling of belonging here really quickly.
Addison began taking classes at Pikes Peak Community College, then transferred to Colorado College, where he now works as the Health and Human Rights Coordinator.
I look back now on 10 years since coming out and becoming homeless. I never imagined that I would be in the position that I am now.
As for Addison's family, time may never heal all wounds, but the Pettys have come a long way.
We're on speaking terms. We can do normal things like have family dinners and things, which is really nice.
And now his sexuality is just a small part of the person Addison has become.
What do you want to tell other kids who are struggling with their gender identity or sexuality?
There'll be a time in other young people's lives too where it doesn't feel like their whole life is consumed by this challenge, and that their whole life can really be taken up by these big and brilliant and beautiful dreams that they have for themselves.
Now, the director of Urban Peak says parents don't have to march in the Pride Parade if it doesn't align with their religious beliefs, but she really urges them to say something to the effect of, "I'm still processing this. I'm not sure how I feel about this, but I do love you." She says that will drastically reduce the chances of their child winding up homeless or attempting suicide.